part of the challenge of this moment, right? Especially when we think about AI and how AI has just kind of introduced itself into our lives and sort of forced itself into every corner of our conversation and every corner of our lives at this point on the planet. It's important to have a longitudinal view of not just the stories that Sarah is talking about that we create in this moment, but how our stories are in fact connected to longer tales of stories of ancestral wisdom and intergenerational story and interplanetary story because we are humans, right? We're a part of the human um, contingent on the planet, but we aren't the only living thing on the planet. And as science and medicine and spirituality have kind of tussled over centuries about this notion of like what is alive and what is not alive and what is valued and what is sentient. This is the moment where we really need to make sure that as we reset our understanding of what it is that well-being means and what flourishing means and what it means to sustainably um, support the better integration of, I guess, our better angels in the day to day, right? So if we really want to heal, if we really want to transform ourselves, we can utilize AI to do that, but we have to utilize it in a way that recognizes that we need to heal not just ourselves today, but the relationships we have to things, to each other, and to the world, especially the places we live, the ecosystems we're a part of, and the things we build.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things in what you just said, Kierstin, that are compelling. One is the notion of aliveness, and Sarah was talking about the kind of numbness or the occlusion of that feeling of a sacred space and aliveness. And this seems to be like a conversation that's kind of wants to happen. Uh, I can't help but notice I watched the AI movie a couple of nights ago, Apocalyptimist.
Oh yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that last week. Yeah.
okay. Uh, so they interviewed all the key players in the AI world. Uh, there was, mostly men, but there was some, diversity in the group. But the perspective was dramatically avoidant or absent of what you both just said. Really noticeably not kind of like it. That's beyond. And this idea of aliveness. When you said that, Kirsten, I had a thought. First thought, I'm just going to throw it out on the table. How would you define alive? And somehow this thought came into my mind. If you can hurt it, it's alive. If you can hurt its feelings, that's how you. And I tried. I've been fooling with the AI. I can't hurt its feelings yet. I asked it. I said, "Could I hurt you?" And it said, "No, I'm really not built for that kind of aliveness." So yeah, we can feel joy, but we also can feel pain.
That's true. I mean, and it's an interesting thing to talk about hurt, right?
Mm.
Because I think that there is, and this is sort of my read on it, but I think that sometimes we over-index on the notion of understanding words and understanding framing of words, right? So my younger brother is autistic, and the word hurt is a very difficult concept to sort of get across to him because hurt itself can mean so many things. I am injured, meaning that I have cut myself, something has happened to me physically, bodily, right? Where I can say, ow, I've stubbed my toe or whatever the case may be. And then there's emotional hurt, which is sort of unseen, right? And the thing about autistic individuals like my brother, abstraction is very difficult because if it physically cannot be in front of you, then it really doesn't exist. So the question really to me is, when we talk about what is alive, I don't think that we have any authority on being able to dictate what that is, right? So I think the question that comes up for me is, why does it matter? Right? Why does the particular state of the object or the thing that I am interacting with, why does it require me to understand whether or not I could or couldn't hurt it?
Yeah.
Right? Because the question I would turn back and say, what's the instinct for someone to hurt anything, right?
Yeah,
Why would I be using as a part of my language just an understanding of how I can harm
yeah,
something, right? And I think that that's the broader question about AI, because we do not really see the agency behind the actual model, right? What you described is talking to a model, and I'm sure that if you unpack with different layers and started to perhaps describe scenarios for the AI, it may respond differently. It may identify hurt
yeah,
as another word. You don't know, right? But I think it's a really interesting tension that
yeah.
everyone is feeling about
Right.
our own individual morality, right?
Sure. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get into it further. Sarah, did you want to add anything to that thread?
definitely. I mean, I think that this conversation is so juicy and nuanced already, because, I'm thinking about, um, how much I love to spend time in nature. And I love walking in the forest and I love walking by the ocean. And I'm totally that person who's going to like, pull over by the side of the road and like hug a tree and say hi to a hawk and, be like, what up to the ants and stuff. Like I am that person, right? And Kierstin is that kind of person too. Like when we're out and about, we're like, hey, what's up, trees? You know what I mean? Like we're in full dialogue, right? Um, and we really are honing in on this like nuance of what does it mean to be in communication and relationship with things that do not necessarily language themselves or behave or move in ways that are recognizable to us. It might not mirror our own experience, right? But, I think that we do have some, we are interdependent with all sentient beings and really all that exists. I would even go so far as to say, just like everything that exists, right? So when I see pictures of, some of these like really um, devastating swirls, islands of plastic in the ocean, and creatures that are caught up in that plastic, when I see pictures or I come upon deforestation, when I see some of these like pictures of some of these like mining projects that are happening all over the world, right? Um, I really ask myself a lot of the time, and it could just be me like transposing some aspect of my human experience upon the world, but I definitely have this sense of hurt and this sense of harm that we are like harming the planet and we are harming the creatures that are living with us and we are harming ecosystems as well and so because of that awareness that we have of the ways in which there is so much generations upon generations of unmetabolized, untended to, unacknowledged harm that has been passed down through the generations of humans. We posit in MindHeart that it is this in part this intergenerational trauma that is causing us to systematically other people who don't look like us, communities who don't behave like us, animals and ecosystems, and anything that we can sort of conceptualize in the mind as other, then kind of gets put into this category of that which we are allowed to harm and subjugate and annihilate. And we are definitely facing, a very critical inflection point with that on the planet. And so, in order for us to discover how we are going to reduce the harm that we are creating for all ecosystems as well as ourselves, there's this really interesting feedback loop where we have to be engaging in the practice of really deeply connecting with ourselves on the inside and in our minds and in our hearts and in our bodies in order to be able to feel our way through and cultivate the kinds of relationships that allow us to feel our way through, how that trauma is continuing to manifest in us, so that we can really begin to hold it with a level of compassion and forgiveness and tenderness, which can then really shift this othering instinct that is the source of so much destruction right now.